Bob Rosner is from Workplace 911. Bob, good morning. Thanks for being with us. We've all got stress, start to finish, top to bottom. Is stress really that big of a deal?
The number one reason employees leave their job, stress. Now, the interesting thing is, in this study, they also asked the bosses why the employees left, and stress didn't even make the top 5 reasons. The issue is we're under a lot of stress, and the people around us, specifically our bosses, don't realize it.
30% of Americans, almost 1 out of 3, say they've been bullied at work. Okay, whether you're a boss, a coworker, even if you're the bully. We brought a special Power Council member to talk about this bully problem.
Bob Rosner is the HR insider. He's the author of The Boss's Survival Guide and the internationally read column, Working Wounded. Bob's seen every landmine in the book, and he says if you know the HR rulebook, you have power.
How do you deal with employees who are poor performers but believe they are top performers?
A woman who was a supervisor emailed me, and she said she had an employee who was doing a terrible job. She started talking to them. They thought they were doing a great job. To her credit, the woman who emailed me said, I was the failure because I hadn't clearly communicated my expectations. One of the things you do is you hire salespeople, engineers, secretaries. You don't hire mind readers. You can't get mind readers at minimum wage.
Because a lot of people think no news is good news, so if no one said anything, I must be doing a great job.
Exactly, but it's up to the boss to connect the dots, to explain expectations, to communicate constructive criticism, to give the employee perspective. It's an honor to be invited onto the Today Show, Good Morning America, Fox, CNN, 60 Minutes, to talk about workplace issues. But it's even more exciting to be able to bring people insight and inspiration to help them tackle their workplace challenges. Instead of saying no because, say yes if. Do you see where I'm going? Yes, we can do that if you can do your regular job and do this in addition, if you can find some extra money to whatever. But the difference between no because and yes if is huge because it creates a climate of brainstorming. It creates a climate where people are encouraged and empowered to move forward. My main claim to fame is that I've personally responded to over 50,000 emails from employees and bosses. So when you listen to me, think of me as the fly on the wall when your employees are talking. Think of me as the person who hears from your mid-level supervisors, possibly even from some of you, talking about workplace problems. How many of you have a to-do list when you go to work? Raise your hand if you have a to-do list. 473 people. Very good. When you speak a lot, you could do this math very quickly. Now, I want to know, how many of you have a not to-do list? Raise your hand. A few people. 1, 2, I see 2 people. I think when we come to work, we're bosses. We want to see a lot done. So think about going to one of those all-you-can-eat buffets, and you have a plate, and you just keep piling the food on, and the plate gets higher and higher. That's what we do at work. The one thing that I want to suggest to you is if you had a meeting with some of your staff or you just walked up to people and said, what are you spending time on every day, every week, that is just a waste of time that we can get rid of? We can all work together to create a more effective and empathetic workplace. I call this presentation 12 Steps to Better Bossing. It's specific, it's practical, but it's fun and it's interactive.
One meeting planner wrote, conference attendees raved about the presentation. One of the best speakers anywhere. Brilliant wit. He helped open my eyes. And powerful presenter. We look forward to working with you again. Well, an HR director observed, get ready to laugh and learn. Bob Rosner is the author of The Boss's Survival Guide, a Wall Street Journal and Amazon Business bestseller. And Working Wounded, advice that adds insight to injury, which has been published in Japan, England, Turkey, and Taiwan, where it was a national bestseller.
With that, let me introduce Bob Rosner.
He's a popular speaker who's spoken powerfully and memorably to leading corporations and associations. But the reason that Bob's probably most familiar to you is because he's the guy the media often turns to when they need insight on what's really going on at work.
A new book called The Boss's Survival Guide has some ideas for your boss on how to treat you better and actually improve your performance.
When I think of what it's like to be a manager today, to be a leader of an organization, what comes to mind for me is the Commodore Hotel in Beirut, Lebanon. Now, the Commodore Hotel during the Beirut Civil War was a slightly different environment. The building had some holes in it. It was in the middle of a civil war. When you were a journalist and you were covering the Beirut Civil War, and you would go to the front desk to check in to the Beirut Commodore Hotel, it wasn't like the Westin, would you like to face this way or that way? What floor would you like to be on? The question that they asked when you checked in at the Commodore Hotel was, sniper side or shelling side? It's in the middle of a civil war. Sound familiar to being a boss today? You get hit from all sides. There was a guy carrying the Olympic torch, and he fell, and the torch went out. There's always when that happens. Okay, so the guy's on the ground, the torch is out. So what do Olympic officials do you think, when the torch goes out? They relight it. Well, you're not thinking like Olympic officials. So what they do is they run over to the guy and they say, "You okay?" And they get the torch and they say, "We'll be back in a minute." And all the way to the Olympic Games following the torch is this truck. And inside the truck is the mother flame. So what they do is they light the torch on the mother flame. And by the way, it's so satisfying to say on three. Why don't you all say it? 1, 2, 3. Isn't it? It's very satisfying. Okay, so now they go back to the guy, the torch goes on its way. And I read that article and I thought to myself, my God, what a concept, the mother flame. Think about your employees. Think about that new driver, think about that counter person who comes to work full of ideas, full of spirit, full of passion. It's out there like that torch. And what happens? It gets blown out. The building ventilation system in most of your buildings can take out somebody's torch, right? So what happens? People stop bringing their passion to work. They hide their torch, they leave it home, they leave it at their car. They don't bring their passion to their work. What I would suggest to you is each and every one of you be the mother flame in your work. When you see somebody dragging, when you see somebody a bit burned out, see if you can give them a spark to put some enthusiasm back in their step. Work is a huge part of our lives, and much of it a struggle. Bosses struggle to listen, and employees struggle to speak up. We can get these two groups working together, and the key is to increase the empathy, and I'll show you how.
Make sure you add a spoonful of sugar.
A simple trick. Think about what you like about the person. Because then you go in and you're offering it in a positive context.
And if you do this, if you can manage to make the points you made and do it in a really constructive way, this can really change your relationships at work for the better, can it?
Yes, the bottom line for all of this is we're all going to walk into a meeting with our zipper open, or if you're a woman with your skirt in your waistband, it's going to happen. You really want people to say something about it. The problem is only about 10% of us know how to offer constructive criticism. So we all have to work on being a little more positive and upbeat.
And bringing your own vulnerability into it.
Just like you said, being present and caring about the person. You know, it's like ultimately you're criticizing them because you care about them. You want to try to make something better.
It's good advice. Bob Rosner, always good to see you.
Great to see you,
Thanks for coming in.